If you are a leader, you already know this. The hardest part of leadership isn't presenting your plan, it's getting questioned about it. And here's what most leaders won't admit. The moment someone asks a tough question, a board member, an investor, an employee, clarity disappears. You ramble, you over explain, you get defensive, or worse, you say something accurate but not strategic, and now the room is confused. In that one moment, that one answer changes how people perceive you. It can shake investor confidence. It can create internal misalignment, trigger doubt inside your leadership team, or make your employees think you don't actually have a plan. I've advised CEOs, founders, military generals, and C suite executives through the highest pressure communication moments inimaginable: board meetings, crisis events, investor calls, hostile interviews. I mean, fuck, even I did a media interview in a war zone. And here's what I can tell you: it's that the leaders who win all use one simple system. It's called the bridge to answer formula. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to answer any question, even the most uncomfortable ones, while staying composed, credible, and completely in control of your narrative. So let's get into it. This is the bridge to answer formula. And so this is all about how we can answer any question effortlessly. This is how we go about doing so. So if you lead a company, if you raise capital, if you work with a board, if you run team, this formula is going to become your communication superpower. It's going to help you stay composed, credible, and in control of the narrative, which is the most important thing as you lead others. So here's why this matters, why you should even care in the first place. And firstly, when it comes to communicating effectively and being able to answer questions effectively, people are going to judge leaders by how they answer questions under pressure. Weak answers end up creating doubt, misalignment, and unnecessary noise. So your ability to answer questions well is going to demonstrate to others how well you perform under pressure. And the better you perform under pressure, the more people are going to end up trusting you and wanting to follow you. And if you're able to deal with that, if you're able to answer questions well, these strong answers are going to be able to create the confidence and the clarity in the direction to get everyone aligned and moving in the same direction. Because every moment where you have an opportunity to have a question and answer session, that moment helps shape your leadership brand. And so the formula turns unpredictable moments into strategic advantage. That's what we want to take advantage of. Anytime somebody asks something, we shouldn't get defensive. We shouldn't say, oh my God, like, what am I going to do about it? It's an opportunity to show your leadership, to show your strategy, and to show where you're going to be taking the company. And here's where this helps. If you are in situations where you have all hands or company-wide updates, if you have investor meetings and board and Q&A, if you happen to be in front of the press, the media, or any type of high-pressure interview, if you have leadership team meetings and strategic offsites, handling any type of tough employee questions, which happen all the time, and then explaining any type of bad news trade-offs or constraints, which is something that's only happening more and more often in today's business environment. And there are issues. If we do not get this wrong, or if we do not get this right, there are consequences. If we don't work on this, I've seen a lot of executives end up rambling, over explaining, or ultimately sounding defensive. None of those help you. None of those make you come off as the leader that you are. Another thing that happens is that people answer literally rather than strategically. So instead of using the opportunity to show your insight or demonstrate your strategy or talk about what is it you're going to be doing, you just answer the question directly to the point. And so it doesn't give anybody the opportunity to understand you better. Huge missed opportunity. And when we don't get this right, we ultimately lose the confidence and trust of those who are listening to us, which is the last thing we want, because ultimately it's about earning trust, aligning teams, and getting the market resonance that we want. This destroys that. And lastly, it undermines alignment, and we don't even realize it because this stuff is silent. It's a silent killer of the alignment in organizations. So what does this look like? What does it look like when we don't do it well? So I want to show something, a quick video from CNBC, and I'm showing this purely for educational purposes. It's not to rag on this particular CEO for his performance, but it's really an opportunity to learn from a situation where we have a leader in a leadership setting talking about his company and not utilizing the moment to be able to put his company in the best light possible. So let's get into it.
Been talking about cocoa prices for one. Now, that's a market where you've seen some huge price increases. We've been wondering how.
So this is how most interviews start. It's a really broad, open-ended question, and she's really just going to ask him, "Tell me about your company. Tell me about what's going on in this environment."
It's been affecting you, cocoa prices, but also other commodities. What's that mean for Cadbury's bottom line?
Well, we're full steam ahead on our business right now, and things are going quite well. So we're optimistic about the future.
Full of
But wondering.
a leader who simply answers directly. Well, how do you see what's happening with cocoa prices? How is that affecting what you're doing? And to just immediately go into an answer, oh, we're pretty optimistic. Everything's going great. That is just a direct answer that doesn't show strategy, doesn't show insight, doesn't give the leader an opportunity to actually shape the narrative and shape what it is that he wants the listener to perceive. Because ultimately, especially when it comes to reporters, they ask the questions, but they are a medium by which you get to your ultimate audience. Meaning, they ask the questions, you answer them, but ultimately you're speaking to the listener at home. And he's certainly not doing that in this moment. And so he wastes the opportunity, the first open-ended broad question, to just give a direct answer that doesn't do anything for anybody.
But what about commodity prices? They are increasing. How do you deal with some of those higher prices?
So again, she's a very seasoned reporter. She's not going to let him get away with it. She really wants to know, what is this company doing as it relates to cocoa prices and these commodity prices. So she asked the same question again.
Well, we, as you say, one of the things we do is we innovate our products to improve them and offer better value. And
I don't know if you noticed, but she absolutely did not say that. There was no way, shape, or form where she talked about how they're innovating products. She just asked a question, but I think the leader in this position was getting a little bit flustered. And so he's just trying to remember, what was his messaging, what were the talking points have to say, and he kind of just spews that out. And that's what you see here.
Like what things? If cocoa prices increase, let's say by 75% over the course of the year, how do you improve your margins when you're dealing with those costs?
well,
Third time asking the question. She's absolutely not letting him get away with it. And it's really unfortunate because on one hand, you could come up and say, well, this seems like an aggressive reporter. She's constantly pushing the same thing over and over again. But I would look at it the other way around. That the leader's not using the opportunity to actually set the narrative and set the messaging. And he's certainly not acknowledging or dealing with the question being asked. He's just going in his own tangent. And that's not helpful to the reporter, especially when commodities and cocoa prices are so vital to this particular segment, especially because this is Cadbury. This is a chocolate company. And so you would think that the leader would have an answer about one of the most important commodities for this business.
well, I can't speculate on what cocoa prices may or may not do in the
Well, that's
future.
okay.
Saying, I'm not going to speculate, is one of the better techniques for when you have people who want to put you in a corner. And that corner is forcing you to speculate or comment about what might happen in the future. And the thing is, if it's not to your advantage, you should never take it.
When you're dealing with
Now,
costs.
saying, hey, I'm not going to speculate about what the Federal Reserve is going to do. I'm not going to speculate about what's going to happen in the market in 6 months. That's fine. You cannot do that when cocoa prices have clearly been going up. And not only is this not a theoretical thing, it's something that's happening in real life. There's also a graphic right there. It's showing us the increase in cocoa prices. So it doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, I'm not going to speculate on it.
Do in the
Well,
future.
that's what they have done over the last year.
Well,
And you saw her call him out on it right there because she said, well, they have done that. And so now he has to give some type of answer.
what we try to do is to innovate our products, offer new products with better value.
Once again, just going back to his talking points, going back to the messaging, not really helpful to him. You can see he's starting to get frustrated in the situation.
Last year.
And now the other anchor is not having it.
For great products at reasonable prices. It tastes really good, Brad. Don't have any comments on anything happening in the industry at large.
So now this anchor is getting visibly annoyed, and for good reasons. The leader has been brought on to a channel that deals with the economy and finance and stocks and commodities. And he's not answering the question about anything to do with that. He's just sticking to these talking points of we're great, we're optimistic, everything's going well, we like what's going to happen in the future. And they're just thick and tired of it. And he's just, that visibility is spewing off. And so this is the moment where credibility is completely evaporated for this leader. There is no coming back from this. And in fact, I personally have never seen anchors get so in the face of the interviewee.
Can we ask you about competitors? Is that a fair question, or we won't get an answer there either?
So total disaster, start to finish. I feel really, really bad for this executive. It's unclear whether he was unprepared for this moment, whether it was his team that didn't give him what he needed, but ultimately he was missing that formula about how to deal with questions, broad, specific, even ones that at some point become a little bit antagonistic, and how to address them in the right way, and in a way that puts him in a position to be viewed as the leader that he truly is. Because there's a reason that he's leading, or he used to lead, this is 16 years old, Cadbury North America. So what does the formula look like? How do we actually put ourselves in a position that even in situations like this, we know exactly how to answer, and we can do so expertly? So this is called the bridge answer formula. There are 4 components here. The very first thing we need to be able to do is to acknowledge the question. And so I think you saw that he did not do that in any way, shape, or form. So we acknowledge the question. From there, we use a bridge phrase. I'll go over what that is in a minute. Then we deliver the core message. And then lastly, we add supporting points. Now, a bridge phrase is the connector between acknowledging the question that was being asked and the core message you want to deliver. That's the reason we have a bridge phrase. And it's one of the most powerful tools that you have whenever you answer questions. So if we zoom out a little bit here, when we acknowledge the question, there are a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can do so in a positive way where you answer yes. You can do so where there is a more polite no, or just we see things differently. So examples of that are, yeah, we are exploring that, or, that's not our priority right now, or we see things differently. Then we can use a bridge phrase, which is how we go from acknowledging the question that's being asked to then direct it to our core message. And examples of bridge phrases are, what I can tell you is. The bottom line is, our main focus is to be clear. And that's why what's important to remember is, let me put that into perspective. And the facts are, those are examples. I'm sure there's more that you can think of, but those are ways that you go from acknowledging to then your core message. And the core message is key because the core message is the idea that you want remembered. So when someone finishes interacting with you, when they have their question answered, this is what they ultimately remember. This is the key piece of information. And this key piece of information needs to revolve around strategy, direction, reasoning, priorities, and principles. So those are different categories of core messages you could have as you're communicating. And lastly, we want to be able to give supporting points, because otherwise what ends up happening is that the messages, I call them floating, which means they're not anchored in reality. It's hard to get them grounded. And so by adding 1 or 2 proof points, whether they're metrics, customer stories, timeline constraints, etc., it helps prove out the message that you just delivered. So when you put all these together, acknowledging the question, bridge phrase, deliver the core message, and adding supporting points, you're able to deal with any question that's asked. So here, as an example of what the CEO could have done, he could have said, when he says, "Hey, Brad, what do you think about commodity prices as it relates to cocoa? Is the price have been going up? Is this something that you're tracking at your company?" He could have acknowledged a question. He could have said, "Absolutely, we always track cocoa prices, and in fact, we track all commodity prices that affect our company. And the reason for that is because," and then main message is because we're always looking to innovate our products at Cadbury, because it's critical for us not only to deliver great products, but to give customers an experience that they're going to enjoy and want to do again and again and again. And supporting point, what you have right there in your studio today are actually examples of that. It's our new Trident Extra Care Gum. And what's great about that is that it's not only been seen to be flying off the shelves because customers love it so much, but it also cleans your teeth and it strengthens them through calcium that's included in there. And so by doing that, he was able to acknowledge, like, yeah, we track cocoa prices. Of course, it's really important to us. I bridge by saying, but what's important here to understand is our main message, which is that it's the innovation and it's the care for the customers and making sure that they love what it is that they receive. That's the most important. And then I give an example, which is something we didn't see in the clip, but they literally had that Trident Extra Care gum on set and he could have referenced it. And so that's a way that he could have just dealt with that question in the first place and not put himself in a position where the interview becomes antagonistic or where the questioning becomes problematic or it feels like he's dodging the entire point. And so that is the formula we want to use. And there are a lot of different places and ways that we can use it. So for example, if you're in a PE-backed company and you're being asked, it could be anyone, by a board member, it could be an investor, it could be anybody, a really important stakeholder, hey, tell us, why are we behind on the value creation plan? Now, on its face, that might feel pretty antagonistic. Like, oh, why are you questioning what I'm doing? Like, well, I have to get defensive now because clearly we are doing well. Everything is fine. You don't need to. Think of it as an opportunity to show how expertly you are undertaking your strategy, how there's a reason behind what it is that you're doing. And so every question is an opportunity to demonstrate your leadership. So an example of how we could answer, why are we behind the value creation plan, is to first of all, acknowledge the question. We're behind the initial plan, but not behind on the fundamentals driving enterprise value. So we are already setting the frame that while the value creation plan, the timeline we have for that might be behind, but we're not behind on the things that actually matter, which are the fundamentals that drive enterprise value, which is really what we care about in this situation. And then we use a bridge phrase to go from that to the main message we want to deliver. And so what matters most right now is de-risking the business before we accelerate. The biggest threat to value creation right now isn't speed, it's instability. That's the main thing we want people to understand, that we're currently trying to de-risk the business because if we go too fast, we might have instability. And then we can add the supporting points. We have 3 critical levers in motion to improve our operational leverage. First, fixing unit economics by addressing pricing integrity, mix and discount discipline. Second, strengthening leadership alignment so priorities don't fragment across functions. Third, removing 2 bottlenecks that are slowing margin improvement. And so we're focusing here because the plan only works if we build a stable operating system that can support scale without eroding margin or burning cash. And so we go from a situation where it feels really difficult. Like, how do I describe and answer why it is that we're behind the value creation plan? And we can do so really expertly by just saying, look, we might be behind plan, but we're not behind the core purpose of what we're trying to do, which is to create enterprise value. Because what really matters most right now in this business is to de-risk it so that we're not in an unstable ground. And so there are 3 things that we're doing. These are the proof points to get us there. And once we do that, we can be in a position where we're not eroding margin or burning cash. And so if I were hearing that answer, I would feel as if the person knows exactly what they're doing. There's a reason behind it, and I have insight into that strategy. So that's what we have here as an example for PE. What if you're, let's say, in a VC-backed company and somebody asked a really important question, like, why is growth slowing right now? And then when it comes to startups, everything has to do with growth and speed and customer acquisition and sales and market share. And so this is a pretty generalized question, which can feel daunting. Like, why is growth slowing down? I mean, maybe you had a period where growth was fantastic, but now it's not trending like it used to be. But there might be a purpose to it. And so part of the way, assuming this is all true, of course, is to acknowledge the question and say, look, growth has slowed in the short term, but that is by design, meaning there's a reason behind it. We're doing this on purpose. And the bridge phase would be, the important thing here is that we're prioritizing customer retention to ultimately improve our valuation before the Series C raise. So that is really important. The reason that the growth is slowed is because instead of trying to sell more, it's all about customer retention. It's all about keeping the hard-earned customers that walk through the door and making sure that they don't leave, because we're not in a position where we want to raise. And for investors, what they really want to see is that net revenue retention. They want to see the customers stay for the long term because that's going to improve valuation. And then the proof points that we can give to that Look, we've seen time and again that companies that prioritize NRR over the last 4 years have secured the best raise terms. So that's proof of why we're doing this right now. And so once we tighten onboarding and customer success best practices, we'll go right back to scaling even faster. So that is a complete way to answer that question. Why are you not growing? Well, it's by design. Because right now we want to be able to improve our customer retention because that's what's going to help us with our Series C. And when we look back historically, we have proof that all of the companies that have the best raise terms of the last 4 years, they really focus on NRR. And so for us, we're going to get these two parts right: the customer retention portion, the customer success, the onboarding. And then once that's set, once we have those numbers in a great place for our raise, we're going to go right back to scaling as fast as we did before. That's fantastic. That absolutely is a great calming answer. And one that gives an indication of what is the strategy, what is the purpose, what is the direction we're going in, why are we going there? This is what somebody wants. And then lastly, just an example of a mid-cap company. So you might already have an existing company that's going really well. You're at a certain size, and you get a question, which is, why is execution so inconsistent across the company? Because unlike a startup where it's about growth, it's about sales, for mid-cap, it's more about execution now that you're so large, because it's this massive Titanic where any type of turn is really, really hard. And so now we're looking internally at the company saying, well, hold on, things that, we've got to a certain size, but why is the execution now starting to be so inconsistent in different parts of the company? Let's acknowledge the question. Look, we're always looking to improve execution of every department and every team across the company. So that is something that's important. You're letting that person know that what is that they're saying is important to you. It is important for this company. And so that's why we're focusing the next quarter, so a very specific timeline, on improving alignment at the leadership and mid-manager level. So there's a plan of action of where you're going to be focusing this next quarter. And so that means creating clear messaging, cascading those more efficiently across the company, and creating shared decision-making principles. So you're talking about when you're going to do something, where you're going to be fixing alignment, and how you're going to be doing so. And the focus being on messaging, cascading those messages clearly, and then making sure that there's shared decision-making principles. Because when people know how to make decisions together, because you have that framework for those shared set of principles, then execution can go faster. And here's the supporting points that you can add in a situation like that. Because look, it was clear that the highest performing quarters we've ever had, historically, all shared a common trait. And that is that communication was efficient, purpose was understood, and alignment was strong across every team. And so once we get alignment back on track, I'm confident it will drastically improve execution. And so here, when we look at the entire story, we're always looking to improve. That's why this next quarter, we're going to be focusing on the mid-level and leadership levels. We're going to be focusing particularly on messages, cascading those messages, of creating those shared principles, because we've understood when we've looked back that the times where we've had the most alignment, the most execution, is when communication was efficient and it was understood. And so that is why alignment is such a big focus now, so that we can get this problematic metric, which is execution, back on track. And so once again, that really just shows control. It shows direction. And this is what ends up earning trust. So again, all of these questions are pretty difficult. All of them can feel antagonistic. They might put you on the defensive, but actually answering them in a way that uses this formula is what can earn you the trust that you want. It can get you the alignment that you need, and ultimately move everybody forward. And so the benefits here, again, if we were to recap, is that this ultimately makes you sound composed and in control. It signals leadership confidence and earns trust. And lastly, it turns every question into a strategic message. Anytime you have an opportunity to communicate to others as a leader, it is a moment where you can demonstrate strategy. It can be a moment where you create that alignment and you have that clarity. So do not waste those moments. And if this matters to you, if you really want to be able to put yourself in a position where you are as clear as possible, you have the trust from others, you want the alignment to take your company to where you want it to go, and you're done hoping for the best, crossing your fingers, and not getting that clarity that you want, that alignment that you want from everybody, reach out to me. Let's see if we can work to fix that. You can either send me the number 313 on Instagram or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And until next time, keep leading with clarity.